Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. Stories of service.
Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. My name's Aresti, and today we have with us Robert Webster. Now, Rob was a paramedic for over 10 years with St. John, serving as both a paramedic and a volunteer, and has since transitioned to a constable with the Northern Territory Police Force. Rob has kindly come in today to speak to us about his career as a paramedic, volunteer, and a police officer serving throughout the Northern Territory in both urban and remote regions. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Rob, tell me a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to become a paramedic.
Yeah, mate. I grew up in New South Wales, down in Port Macquarie, and part of my upbringing kind of always idolised, I guess, emergency service workers. Had some in the family, some close friends. One of my schoolmates, his dad was a sergeant in New South Wales Police. My sister and her now husband are in policing. Another really close family friend, Cameron, he was a police officer as well. And so I kind of thought that might be a path for me growing up. I remember in year 10 at school, I was actually able to do a ride-along with New South Wales Police. And it was really good. We got to go out and attend jobs with general duties police, plainclothes police, and had an absolute ball. And then kind of put that aside, left school, didn't do year 11 and 12, wasn't a huge fan of study back then, and ended up trying a few other things. Did a bit of panel beating, got into hospitality, did that for a while, got into security, and really started to enjoy that part of my life. But then at one point, Cameron, the family friend, rang me up and said, come up to Nhulunbuy. There's a job up here if you want it at the pub. And the beauty about it is you don't have to pay for a rent. So you're still earning comparable money to Sydney without having to pay the rent. I thought, why not? I'll go up for a couple of months. And that was 2007 or 8.
Bit of an adventure and life experience as well.
Yeah, so I've been up in the Territory since then. Ended up leaving the pub, started working in the mine, and then that's where I got my foot in the door with ambulance. The job at the mine was FIFO, fly in, fly out.
Yep.
So it was 2 weeks on and a week off. At one point, I decided not to fly out on my week off and to stay in town and start volunteering with St. John Ambulance. And that then we had really good volunteer leadership there. Mark, who you know, was there at the time, and he sort of encouraged the attendance. The employer at the mine, he signed off on covering the expenditure for me staying in town because I was doing that volunteering with St. John. And it was a little bit different back then. We had a couple of paid paramedics, but when there was a volunteer available, you could jump on the ambulance with one of them if it was just a low acuity job, or if it was a higher risk sort of job, then you'd jump on with both the crew and help out however you could.
So very dissimilar to the volunteers these days, where you're actually on an emergency crew with actual paramedics rather than attending general events. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. You'd still do those duties as they came up, the local football or swimming carnival or whatever it may be, but the exciting stuff that most people would say, that riding along with the paramedic crew, that was really good. It was a really good opportunity that isn't sort of as available now with all the changes in health. I'm not surprised, it's fine. Not that we were tasked with doing much more than carrying the bags or, parking the car or something like that. But, it was a really good sort of eye-opening avenue into an emergency service.
Yep. I suppose it, like you said, it opened your eyes and gave you that little bit of an inspiration to possibly undertake this work and inspire you to become a paramedic.
Yeah, sure. And I think I always thought policing was going to be the pathway for, the reasons I mentioned earlier. But I had a pretty decent motorbike crash in 2006. Obviously, had dealt with the New South Wales ambulance hands-on there. They were fantastic. Had another incident. There was one night where I finished working on a New Year's Eve in the city, Darling Harbour in Sydney, and this was shortly before I moved to Nhulunbuy, and a guy got hit by a car. And all I could really do, because no training except your standard first aid certificate, was put him in the recovery position. And then that proved to be quite important. He had a lot of blood in his mouth and airway, had he not been rolled over, could have been a very different outcome for that fellow. So small little things like that kind of made me appreciate what paramedics do, how they help people, and then getting to be a little bit hands-on with the volunteer pathway, it certainly locks me in.
Did starting as a volunteer help you become a paramedic?
At that stage, yes. So I went through paramedicine in a different pathway than what it is now. Now you go to university, you get your degree, you come out, you do your internship, and you get signed off. Back then, it was a diploma. So it was more hands-on practical skills blocks. So you'd start off with clinical 1 studies, you'd come back for rescue, go back for another set of studies, and your skills would increase each time that you came back to the classroom.
So it's more a vocational pathway rather than a university
100%.
pathway.
And unfortunately that's changed. It's probably bringing out a younger cohort of paramedics, and hopefully they offer longer careers. For me, I liked the vocational entry, and I wasn't sort of a huge fan of study prior to that. Obviously, once you get into ambulance, you really need to focus. You really need to learn to study if you haven't already learned how to do that, because things are always changing. It's pretty intense, but it was what I needed to kind of get that focus and get that career going, was the ability to say, all right, this is something I want to do, let's do it properly.
Right, so at this time you were still based in Nhulunbuy, is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So I was working in the mines, volunteering with the ambulance, and the more I volunteered with the ambulance, the less interested I became in the mine work at that time. It was just something new and exciting and different. And so I kept volunteering, I kept it all going along. And then at one point, I was offered the opportunity to do clinical 1 studies, that introduction to paramedicine, in Darwin as a volunteer, and jumped at it. There you go. It was going to be Clin 1 and the driver training. Who'd say no? So I rang up my boss at the time and said I need 12 weeks off.
12 weeks. So first block was 12 weeks. So go on to your new boss, FIFO, who supported you through this time, then said, hey, I need to take 12 weeks off.
Yeah, and he wasn't going to say no. He knew the reasons why. I think he knew that there was probably a risk of me leaving at the time. But in my heart, I just wanted to go and get some more training, get some better understanding of what is required in the role, and jumped at the opportunity, went over to Darwin, jumped on with a whole bunch of paid guys. So they did a big recruitment. Can't remember how many were in the class, maybe 20, and then a couple of volunteers. And so I went through and did the 12 weeks unpaid, watching everyone else go through.
Get paid.
I'm wearing the white shirt, they're wearing the green shirt. So I did feel a little bit sort of out of place at the start, but by the end we formed a pretty good bond with all of us. There's still quite a few in the job. And it had a great time. Fortunately for me, by the end of it, they went, I think it was probably 2/3 of the way through. They said, oh, you can have a casual contract in Nhulunbuy. So if someone books off sick, you can work on the crew as a paid member.
Yep.
And cover it off that way. And I was like,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now get paid on my week off instead of doing it all for free. But of course, another, I think, month went by, and they said, oh, it's actually an opening down in Tennant Creek, full-time, starting in the middle of the year. So a couple of months away. Do you want that? Absolutely.
Jump straight on it.
Absolutely. Send me down. Sorry, boss. I've got a couple of months and then I've got to move to Tennant Creek.
So you get more and more remote as we go.
I don't know. Nhulunbuy is pretty remote. You can't really drive out of there on a day trip. At least Tennant Creek, it's only a few hours to Alice Springs.
True.
If you need to go to the movies or get some KFC. But yeah, no. So I was very fortunate in being sent down to Tennant Creek, and it's one of those places, small town, probably I think maybe 3,000 in the area at that time, and there was 5, I think, ambulance staff, the officer in charge at that time, and then 4 people who worked on road.
Yeah.
A couple of us, all from that recruitment.
So very fresh paramedics going in.
Yeah. So there was one sort of tenured student paramedic, the OIC, the officer in charge, and a couple of brand newbies. It was good fun. It was not, you weren't left to sink or swim or anything like that. If you needed more advanced help, the officer in charge would come out if required. But we did well with what skills we had, and I think it was a really good way to learn, because you didn't always have to rely on someone else to give you the answer. You figured it out, and if you didn't know something from that case that you've just run, go home, study a whole lot about that case so that the next time you get it, you're 10 times more confident in what you did.
The little gaps in knowledge and solidifying your learning. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. But the training was always, if you don't know, that's okay. Treat the patient symptomatically and watch for the improvements, and then modify your treatment as required, and you'll mitigate the risk of a negative outcome. So it was really, really good. It was a good experience.
Oh, that's awesome. So how long did you spend in Tennant Creek?
That time was a couple of years. Yeah, I reckon it's maybe a touch over 2 years. And in that time, had a blast. You'd work a few days, have a couple of days off, the roster's changed since then. So you'd work really hard for a couple of days. You'd be on call 24/7 or through the night. You'd not get much sleep, and then you'd drive down to Alice Springs on your days off and go do your shopping and catch a movie or get that KFC that you've been hanging out for, as I said.
How did you go going from say Nullumboy going down to Tennant Creek? Obviously Nullumboy, there's a little bit more to do. There's lots of fishing and that sort of stuff. How did you go from that to being in the centre of Australia with no fishing?
Well, you're probably going to hate me for this. I'm not real keen on fishing.
Not a king fisherman?
And, camping's any place that doesn't have an air conditioner. So for me, it wasn't a huge change. I love the water. I grew up on the water. I grew up in, at the beach that you can swim in and go surfing, a lot of the time. So that was a big change, not to be near the water and to kind of feel a little bit landlocked. And the people in Nullumboy were incredible. Nothing wrong with the people in Tennant Creek, don't get me wrong. I've got lots of lifelong relationships with people from Tennant Creek now, but Nullumboy was probably the best place for me to be introduced to the territory.
Yep.
Just because of how welcoming everyone is, and yeah, it was a really good experience. Moving to Tennant Creek, it's a bit different. I saw my first sort of snake in person. I remember Linda, who the boss was at the time, started screaming while Brock and I were out the front, and there's this snake coming out of the ambulance bay. So it was, real sort of, we're in the bush.
Welcome to the bush.
Yeah, kind of place. But I loved it. I really loved my time in Tennant Creek as a paramedic. At one point, I wanted to get out. I wanted to go back to a city, and for whatever reason, I can't remember what the driving factor was, but at some point I decided to move back to Darwin.
So basically you'd done your time remote,
yeah,
and it was time to come to see civilization again,
to
I suppose.
Mix it up a bit, yeah. And so came back up to Darwin and started working on road in Darwin. Now, at that time, there wasn't a hell of a lot of overtime available to on-road staff. I don't know how it worked. People just didn't book off sick, or we had more than enough staff, but there was never any OT on road. And someone mentioned, hey, comms is always short of staff. Why don't you give that a go? So I spoke to someone, and she got me in there, and I did my call taker training and started to really enjoy it. So I did a little bit of call taking, instantly sort of started doing a little bit of dispatching, and thought, oh, I've got two jobs I really like now. So it was really great, the opportunity to move back to Darwin, and had a blast. Yeah, it was really good.
Did you find coming into comms and seeing the side, because you've covered the volunteer side now, then you've covered the paid side as a paramedic, and then coming into comms, that allowed you to kind of see the whole beast at work and how everything works? Did you find that helped you on road to understand how comms works?
100%. Not only helped me on road, but built a hell of a lot more respect, I think, for the job that call takers and dispatchers do, and more of an understanding as to why you may have been sent to that job on that code of response, as in lights and sirens, or without lights and sirens, or take your time for that job. There's a few different codes of response that we used at the time. They're priority now. They used to just be code 1, 2, and 3 back
correct.
in the day. So I got a better understanding of that. I sort of started to realise the tyranny of distance that we faced in the Northern Territory as well. So how prolonged a case could be. I've done some really long jobs in Tennant Creek. You go down the Barclay Highway for a car versus a cow, and you've got someone who may have passed away, someone who's critically injured, a couple more who are really sick, and it's you and another paramedic at that time. You can call in air support. They're not there straight away. So you're doing a lot, and then you've got to convey them all the way back to Tennant Creek for the next level of care. And I think you kind of, in that moment, you think it's all about what you're doing, and you could be tied up at that job for hours. I remember one job, pretty much how that was. We ended up waiting like 5 hours for the plane to land because I was told that they were going to be on their way when we were leaving. I was told that they were coming, and then there were some issues with pilot hours or whatever it was. So we're treating people, longer than we typically would have. But then you kind of understand that they're coming all the way from Alice Springs. You're north of Tennant Creek now, but it still probably would have been quicker than driving them back.
Yeah,
and they get to go immediately to the higher level.
Exactly, they've normally got doctors and nurses on board, and
correct.
They've got a little bit more kit than what's in the ambulance as well.
So obviously, right decision to do for the patient in that situation, and that offers a better outcome for everyone involved. But in that moment, you feel like, why is everything so far away from me? But then you go and work in comms and you realise it's not for me, it's for everyone. Even the Darwin crews get sent out to Litchfield or Dundee or something like that. If there's a rollover, quad bike crash down gunpoint, it's going to take you a while to get there. It's going to take you a while to get back. So.
That's right. And there's not always that air support available with those other companies that we deal with. There could be an issue, like you said, of hours for the flight crew. It could be already tasked or something. The helo could be down for maintenance. There could be lots of different, competing factors for this.
Yeah. And so you're dealing with distance. You're also dealing with patients that quite often in the Northern Territory have complex medical issues. They've got comorbidities. So they've got more than one thing wrong with them on their day-to-day basis. And then we're adding an acute or like a right now problem on top of that. So what may be sort of a simple case for someone who's of normally really good health becomes a complex case. So you're dealing with distance, you're now dealing with more complexities. So I think that people in the Territory are very lucky to have the paramedics that they do today, not just because of the skills that they have in uni, but the skills that they learn in the Territory. We're unique, and what our guys can do with the equipment that they have and the funding that they have is pretty incredible.
We work with a lot of really good organisations to make sure that we have the whole NT covered for medical care.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of good organisations.
But I'll always favour a St John member over someone else.
Of course. All right, so you've gone from Nullarbor, you've gone to Tennant Creek, you've come to Darwin, you've kind of covered your paramedics, you've covered your comms, you've covered your volleys. Where to from there?
Back to Tennant Creek, of course.
Back to Tennant Creek.
Missed the place. I did a couple more years in Darwin, missed the place, thought why not, got back to Tennant Creek, and I was pretty lucky. A short time after getting there, the officer in charge position came up. So I went for that and got that. I'm now qualified as a unsupervised, fully qualified paramedic. Went for that job, got it, and was stoked. Didn't realise how sleep deprived I would be because, like I said earlier, if you've got a junior crew that needs some help, they're calling the OIC out. So a lot of call outs, a lot of interrupted sleep, but really good development opportunity for me at that time. I hadn't really taken on leadership roles in the past, and I think that it was a really good way to learn. I had my boss at the time, Craig, available to me, 24/7 if I had a operational or logistical issue, and which sometimes happen. You get a crew sent out down the highway down to help out Ali Karung Clinic, for example. If they've got a big job on, you lose your crew, then Tennant Creek's got no one, so you're kind of it, and then you're recruiting on your volunteers or your available off-duty staff if they haven't gone to Alice for the days off. So arranging, the right vehicle, the right response at the right time, at all hours. It was a good learning opportunity for me, but I'm glad I had the support that I had to get through that available to me over the phone or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so coming in as an OIC, obviously very new to the managerial type roles, having a small team and a lot of junior paramedics, as you said, down there. How did you find mentoring these new guys coming in? Is that something that you like doing? Do you like mentoring new paramedics and help shaping them?
Yeah, you've got to, and it was a learning process for me. I didn't have the training at that time to probably do it as a pro from day one. It took me learning how to probably understand people better. What works for you might not work for the next person. Learning their way of learning and then kind of working with them. Some people might be more hands-on. Some people you might want to, refer back to or go with them to a clinical study that might relate to the thing. So it's ultimately it was again just better development for me in the role, and I was pretty lucky. Like anyone that I kind of worked with were good staff. They were already pretty good people, and I probably learnt as much from them as they did from me.
Yeah, I found that too in comms, having mentored quite a few people, like just going in and having that conversation, setting the baseline. How do you like to hear feedback, both positive and negative? What's your learning style? Are you paper-based, or are you more sort of like me and you, learning-based? We learn by doing things, and just having that open communication and just being upfront and honest is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, there's some things I don't know. When you find out, let me know.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that. My biggest enjoyment in the job is trauma. If someone's had some pretty catastrophic injuries, to me, that's a really, really interesting case to work on. You can see what you're doing. You're stemming the bleeding. You can see that the bleeding's reducing or stopped, or you can see what you're doing, and that to me I really like. So anything trauma, I certainly took a lead on. I feel the more medically based stuff, I've actually found the guys from university, they're all book smart. They know exactly what should happen. Now, we know in real life, things don't always happen like the book says.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
And that's where my sort of guidance is. Yeah, 100%. Yep, you're right. That's great. What if this happens? Because we've seen it happen on road. Oh, well, doesn't really tell us that. Well, great. This is where we revert back to these methods, or if you really don't know, treat symptomatically. So it was good. It was really good.
This is probably something that we didn't discuss, but it's just popped into my head. What was it like, if you feel like discussing it, seeing a deceased person for the first time as a trainee?
It was okay. So for me, and I think so for those that don't know, Oresti and I used to work together in comms at one point, and I say this to most of the new staff, so you may have heard me say this before, is you've got to remember the things that we do and the jobs that we're helping with, then they're an emergency, but they're not our emergency. So you've just got to kind of separate yourself from the incident. While you're in it, you're 100% invested. You're going to do everything you can to help that person, be it over the phone, talking them through pre-arrival instructions, or you might have someone wanting to deliver a baby. You can talk them through even complex childbirth over the phone. You can help someone in person. You can deliver all sorts of treatments, drugs, whatever it may be. But at the end of it, it's not your emergency. You've got to go to another call. So your next job might be more serious, or it might be really low acuity. If you're taking all of that on board every day as your own, your career's probably not going to last as long as the next person who's got that ability to separate. So for me, seeing a deceased person for the first time, probably what I expected. Which may be a boring answer, but there's no, I don't want to sound cliche, but there's no soul in them. There's no life in them. They're not who they were. So it's just about respecting them in that moment, respecting any friends or family that may be present.
Yep.
That you may have to go and tell them, unfortunately, they have died. There's nothing that we can do in this circumstance.
One thing I want to bring up, I liked how you said that, and I've heard this from a few paramedics. They never use passed away. They always use died or deceased. Can you tell me why that is?
I revert back to my instructor when I was first starting with the ambulance. Don't say they're gone. Gone where? Don't say they've passed. Passed what? Be very direct and very clear.
Yep.
Make it so it cannot be confused, because you don't want to prolong that moment for that person.
Yep.
And so obviously you don't want to prolong it for yourself in some circumstances. There are things that you can do to help these people. Adding on to the stress or dragging things out is not one of them. So being clear, this person has died. Is there anyone that you want us to contact? Is there anything that we can do for you in this moment? Slightly better than the worst experience that you're having right now. So that's probably similar training, I guess everyone's had. If you've heard that from multiple people.
Yeah, correct. And one of the things that I've heard, you follow a lot of these emergency medical services Facebook pages and Instagram pages, and one of the things that I read someone has said is, in a lot of cultures and religions, being there at someone's birth or death is very, very sacred, and we have the honor to be able to be present at a lot of these, whether it's a birth or death. So that's something that we carry with us basically for the rest of our lives, as the family do as well. So it's something that, I'm really honoured to be able to do, to be there with that person, whether it's at that birth or their death, and help out as best as I can.
Yeah, I think you've expressed that very well. You're involved in a moment that not a lot of people will kind of truly understand, and until they've had that loss in their life and you're playing a role in it. They're going to remember not necessarily what you said, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And if it's anything but, respected and cared for, you're not doing your job well.
Yep.
So that's probably the end of life. One of my most memorable jobs is the opposite, is the start of life. You said that we're there for childbirth as well. And I've had one where I was the lead paramedic in the back of an ambulance.
Tell me. This sounds like a great one.
Yeah, so I was working at a casualty station. This is quite a few years ago. I was still a student. So I was still under supervision at that time, and I was working with a much more tenured paramedic who, when we got the job, we wear little pages on our belt. I think the only reason why pages still exist are for us and maybe Fiery. So we're wearing pages, and the pager goes off, beep, 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 we've got this job. And it was at a place where people from outside of Darwin come in, and where they reside while they're waiting to have their baby. And we got the job, and my partner at the time, probably a little bit of what we now refer to as unconscious bias, as jokingly said, all right, it's an urgent job, we'll go there urgently, that's fine, but don't be surprised if there's no baby coming today, because they often call us 10 minutes after conception and say it might be coming. And so it kind of eased the mood. And look, if you can't have a joke like that in emergency services, again, probably not going to have a super long career. You need to be able to be jovial about seriousness.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a lot of the pressure off.
Yeah, not just the pressure, but it kind of helps you dissociate a little bit. Of course, not while you're in the moment, but I think that was fine. Anyway, so we've gone to the job. We've arrived at the pickup point, and we've met with our patient who had someone with her looking after her, and had to do a visual sort of inspection to see what was going on, because she felt the urge to push and nothing sort of happening. Get her in the ambulance, start driving, monitoring her the whole way throughout, and then at Tambling.
Oh yeah, Tambling. Yep, near the hospital.
Yeah,
Yep.
Sorry, I had to think of the street name. So literally,
a couple of streets away from the hospital.
Less than a K probably from the hospital. We've had to pull over. We've got a real baby coming. It's happening now. Oh mate, pull over. Let's do it.
And this is your first one ever?
Yeah, first not in a book or not in a YouTube video, not in the classroom. This is the first real one, and I was shaking. I was full confident to the patient when looking at her, when going about the delivery business, and I was nervous. I was very nervous.
It's game time.
I'd asked her is this your first pregnancy? She'd had multiple children, so we knew it wasn't going to be a protracted childbirth.
So for the people that are listening that are not in the medical industry, if they've had a couple of different births, more than one, so we ask them, is this your first delivery over the phone? Very similar to obviously what you guys asked. If it's more than one, a tendency to the baby to deliver quicker, is that right?
Yeah, and I think we were up to number 5 or 6 from memory.
Okay.
So this baby was holding on for the last month, and it was ready to come out. And I'm in the back. Baby starts coming out, comes out, helping, doing all the things that we do. Baby comes out, and I'm looking. My partner at the time, he's still trying to put his gloves on. His hands are sweaty, and he's trying to. He wasn't expecting a baby coming. Fortunately, child was born, no complications, wrapped up warm. Up on mum's belly, job done. Mum was pretty blasé about it. She, it wasn't her first rodeo. Yep. She was happy, and we were able to fit. Oh, by that stage, one of the paramedic training college ladies had heard us say we're going to have a baby on the side of the road. Yep. She's rocked up and said, "Oh, we're going to have a baby." No, we're already done here. You're all good. Get back
too
to
late.
The office.
Too late.
Yeah, us old pros. We know what we're doing.
How did that feel when you saw that coming out as a new paramedic? What was going through your head?
Everything that I'd learned in the classroom, everything that I'd sort of seen in a YouTube video or read in a book, everything was going through my head. What do I need to look for? When do I need to start looking for respirations? What colour is the baby? What's their cry like? All those sorts of things.
I suppose the first thing you're looking for is it the head coming out first.
Yeah, and it was. Fortunately, it was. The delivery had started. The baby's head was starting to protrude, but the water broke in front of me. So I got to see that. That was pretty awesome. And it was just the back of her head. At that time, I was kind of like, this doesn't look like it should. But it obviously all kind of went to normal as soon as that.
Because the skull's not completely formed. It kind of cones out. Is that right?
Yeah, so it depends. In that instance, all I saw was the back of her head and a lot of hair after, the water had broken and things had returned to normal, or what I was expecting, rather. And yeah, it was a really sort of uncomplicated birth for the first one, and it was, I think, a good icebreaker. I knew that if there was going to be an issue with the child post-delivery, that there were other units coming. I knew what I needed to do in between then and that occurring, what to look for, how to assess the APGAR score, all of those sort of, which is, just to see how well oxygenated the child may be, how it's kind of awake or alert or responsive they may be, and those sorts of things. They get a score straight after birth and a few minutes again later, and obviously that keeps improving, then you're on a winner. But yeah, so it was minimal input from me, but it was certainly just probably one of the best experiences I had on road ever, and it was a positive one. The people expect you to, tell me a story about Ben, and they're expecting you to talk about the person who's passed away,
or the severe trauma or something like that. Yeah,
and I've got a ton of those jobs that I can think of. I think everyone does, especially once you've been in the job for a little bit. But that was probably the coolest thing I'd experienced. And then later in life, I was able to be in the same position to deliver one of my kids. So
you're a seasoned pro by then.
Yeah, and had a hell of a lot more supervision that time around. Had a room full of midwives and doctors, and so it was pretty special reliving it with my own child as well. But in that moment, that was really cool. It was not something that I'd sort of expected, but I enjoyed it.
So, Rob, is there anything else that you can share with us? Any memorable experiences that you've had either as a paramedic or as a volunteer?
How much time we got? I think working in ambulance in the Northern Territory is pretty unique. Obviously, we've got a different style of living up here, and one of the biggest sort of aspect is the outdoorsy stuff. And I know I said I wasn't into fishing, but I'm into all things fast. So a cool thing that I've been able to do is head down to Fink Desert Race.
Yep.
Do some work down there. I was the OIC of Tanner Creek at the time, so I got to lead one of the checkpoint areas, which was really cool. And you want trauma, you're going to have some trauma. So plenty of broken bones and things like that. It was pretty low key the year that I was there. We didn't have anything sort of life-threatening, especially where I was. But just the experience of being down there, it's I don't know how to word it. It's just unique and something that New South Wales ambos or Queensland, they're not going to be able to do. It's really good fun. Get to go up in a helicopter at one point. So I've had a blast doing that. I've gone to Syria. So I remember my first Christmas back when I sort of used to be, I guess, more outward with my Christmasing. Wore a Christmas hat and Christmas epaulets.
Yeah, we do that in comms as well. Christmas epaulets.
And then got a pretty serious job, and I remember having to just discreetly take my Christmas hat off and put it away in my pocket and be all sort of somber in that moment. So I don't go over the top with holidays anymore, just because of that one experience. I didn't want to take anything away from
whatever happened there,
what was going on.
Yeah.
And there was certainly no disrespect meant or caused. There was no negative feedback or anything like that. But it's in those moments you kind of realize, all right, so this is always the most serious job that I'll have. Yep. Until now. Now I've gone into a different career. It's still just as serious, and because you've got to remember, you're going to people. The term emergency is subjective. Yes, what's an emergency to you might be slightly different to me.
Yep.
Might be worse. Might be less important. But you're always going to someone who's, the majority of the time we're responding to someone's emergency. They're probably having one of the worst days that they've had, and it goes back to what we said earlier. They're not going to, they're going to remember your role in that thing. So, always having the shirt on and tucked in was super important. Always, looking the part, speaking the part, being the part, and when it's all over, sure, joke around at the station or in the car to and from. But when you're on the job, you're really on the job.
Yep.
One of the coolest injuries I saw, someone who got stabbed to the face, and it actually cut through their entire cheek. Ooh. So you could see the teeth and everything from a different spot that you don't know.
Right.
Is it Two-Face from Batman?
Through
the side. So that was a, I guess, quote unquote cool injury I've seen. Saw, people ejected from vehicles or, in pretty serious incidents with minimal injury, and seen what looks like a relatively minor incident with serious injuries. So you never really know what you're walking into.
Yep.
And I think that's all part of the thrill of the job.
Yeah, I think, things like pain is subjective, and whatever people, bodies can kind of tolerate is going to be different as well, what everyone can kind of handle.
Yeah. And I've talked a bit about stuff on road, but comms is just as important. You're the first voice of reason in this emergency. Well, technically Telstra is. They're going to answer the phone wherever you are in Australia and direct you to the most appropriate and closest emergency service provider. For us in the Territory, it's the Northern Territory Police, Fire and Emergency Services take the calls for their three things, and St John takes it for medical calls. Working in comms, so you're the voice of reason in that emergency situation, and sometimes bringing order out of chaos and drilling down to the right message to make sure that you're delivering the best pre-ambulance care that you can.
Yep.
For not only the patient but the person on the end of the phone.
Exactly. And if we can do things like, controlling bleeding or getting, possibly aspirin to that patient that might be having a query MI, as long as it's obviously indicated, that helps you guys out on the road as well.
Yeah, so it's a really good experience being able to. The other thing that people kind of don't really understand is we don't get to see jobs the whole way through. I'm not going to know that when I drop you off at the hospital, sometimes I'm not going to know what your outcome is. And I don't know really a lot more than what I saw prior to my arrival. I can put a few things together and kind of understand that, all right, it's a car accident, those two cars have collided or whatever. But if it's just another scene and it's not as obvious as a car accident, then I may not know. So being that extra step earlier, being in the call taking room adds a whole new perspective to the emergencies that we respond to. And I had just as much fun in the comms room. Like the complex cases, you may be on the phone for a long time.
Yeah, I've had calls that have lasted over 2 hours.
So there you are. You're in that moment. You're investing yourself in that moment for over 2 hours. It's challenging, but it's super rewarding, especially when you get there and you hear paramedics going mobile to the hospital. Well, you know that they wouldn't have been going mobile to the hospital if you didn't do a good job prior to their arrival.
Exactly, and obviously there's a chance of survival if they're going to the hospital.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that was really, really enjoyable. The dispatching side of it. So not the call taking. Put that aside. Someone's taking the call right now. Oresti's here. He's taking a call. I'm the dispatcher. I can see the job. I can see what he's writing on the job. I can kind of sense the urgency in the job by what's written in it. What's written in. So we use a triaging system. So some of the questions and answers that you'll see kind of indicate a higher or lower response for the ambulance. And if he's adding some notes on top of those questions, I know that there may be some urgency in it. Have a quick read. Oh, all right, now I've got to find a resource for it. You're playing a real life, and not to take anything away from it, please don't take this as an untoward way, but you're playing a real life chess game. You're making sure that you're sending the best resource to the highest in need in that moment. But you've got three of those highest in need, and they're in two different towns, and you've got these resources here and there. It's really good.
Yeah, we're looking at risk factors. We're looking at mechanism. We're looking at if they've got any past medical history. It's an ever changing game of chess that can change by the second.
And I think I like the pressure. I like to be in that immediate, stress environment, having that adrenaline run through you.
I know exactly how you feel. I love it too.
Yeah, it's addictive.
I love what I do.
And you get it on road for those big jobs you're responding to. You get dispatched to a high risk job, or where the mechanism of injury is going to be pretty substantial. You're expecting a whole bunch so you're talking the whole way to the job. For those serious jobs, you're talking with your partner and you're talking about, all right, if we see this, we're doing this. All right, you're going to do airway and I'm going to do these other things, or whatever the case may be. You're already 3/4 through the job when you get there. Now you may get there and it's not as reported. It's far less significant as the caller has made it out to be, and that's fine. We understand that.
On the flip side, it could also be the opposite, though,
It could be. And those are the jobs that, thank God we already discussed this, because we don't need to have that conversation when we get there. A paramedic can go and do this while B paramedic does this, and there's no need to talk. You can listen to the story of the bystanders. You can recruit people to help you, as may be, even if it's something as simple as hold this bag for me or pass me that yellow thing. You're 2 steps ahead with yourself. So it's high adrenaline sometimes, and then you're a coiled spring other times. You're just waiting for that job. You're sitting there waiting, and you might just get a whole bunch of low acuity stuff throughout the day, and that's fine.
You need those days, I feel.
Yeah, you need them to recover, but sometimes you also need that adrenaline dump. But I was fortunate enough to get that both on road and in comms, and the higher I went within the organisation, probably on road, especially the more serious jobs you get to go to. So when I was the OIC in Tennant Creek, I also got to do a bit of what was station officer. I think it's now duty manager.
Yep, correct.
In Alice Springs, I did a bit in Catherine when Reese was on leave, and the job there is just about making sure that the crews have got everything that they need to run their shift well. The vehicles are well maintained and everything's accountable for and stuff, but you're an extra set of hands at a big job.
Yep.
You're not there to take over. You may just be there to scribe, but you're that extra set of hands for that paramedic crew. So you get exposed to more of the higher acuity jobs, which for me was really enjoyable and great. I got to do a little bit of it in Darwin, but towards the later part of my career, I've moved more into comms and spent less time on road. I just really enjoyed comms, and I started to progress in the managerial positions. So it was probably more opportunity for me there at that time. But fortunately, I love the job just as much in there.
So we've got over your career as a paramedic. You got to a point after about 10 years as a paramedic and you thought it was time for a career change. Talk me through a little bit about what kind of drove that and what you went to after becoming a paramedic.
I think my father's passing was a big moment for myself and my family, and it was one of those, again, at the risk of sounding cliche, it was one of those things that you go, you don't have endless time. If you want to do something else, now's the time. I'd done over 9.5 years paid, plus a year and a half, I think, as a volunteer. So I'd done over 10 years with St John, and thought, now's the time. I'm not. If I leave it much longer, I'll have the excuse of being too old.
Yep.
And I didn't want to risk that. So yeah, put in the effort to get my fitness up, put in the applications. And fortunately for me, I was awarded a job with the Northern Territory Police.
Was that your preference to stay in the NT?
Absolutely. I've built a life here. I've still got a strong connection with Port Macquarie in New South Wales and the beaches that you can swim in without the risk of crocodiles and sharks, as significant as up here. But no, the Territories offered me so much. I wouldn't have experienced all the things that I have and gotten to where I am without the Northern Territory. So I wanted to stay here. For transparency, I put in for other agencies at the same time and was going through those processes. But fortunately for me, NT Police came to the party first and offered me a job, and so I moved over.
Nice. So talk me through, you've left your job as a paramedic now at St John, you're in kind of new territory with NT Police, still within the emergency services realm. Talk me through like your recruit course, kind of what that involved and how you found going from a job where, you're responding to medical emergencies to, responding to things that police do and it's more, physical based.
Yes and no. So we'll start with the college. As you'd anticipate, there's a lot of legislation you've got to cover. You need to understand not just the offences, but what the outcomes are for offending, what powers police have, what they cannot do, other aspects of the role. So you've got to think that police are the lead agency for all emergencies, right? If there's a cyclone, police take the lead. If there's a car accident, well, ambulance do the patients, fireys do the scene, sort of the immediate inner scene, and police will close off or cordon off certain areas to make sure that those two agencies are safe, and will investigate, what's occurred or how it's occurred. But it's not just all about ambulance, or all about police, or all about fire. You've got an overarching sort of responsibility to everyone, which is pretty cool. So you learn about all of that sort of stuff. You learn about the police systems, which are often complex. You've got certain things in different sort of areas that you've got to navigate. You learn to do that pretty quickly, but in the classroom, it's a lot to take in. And then over the roughly 6-month period, you're also getting to do what people would call the cool stuff or the fun stuff, which are your defensive tactics. So you learn how to defend against attackers, or to make an arrest.
Yep.
Which can often be physical. So you need to learn how to protect yourself and your colleagues and whatnot. You get to do more driving. So I obviously did driver training with ambulance.
Yep.
I got to do another set of driver training with police.
Nice.
And it was really good fun. You're still covering off a lot of the same stuff, but the police driving, you don't chase anyone in an ambulance. Like, you might have to do that in the role of policing, so you learn how to do that in the safest way possible to mitigate the risk to the public. And firearms, you've got to operate a firearm. Some people have grown up with guns. They may have a dad that took them pig hunting or something, so they're very familiar with how to use a rifle, for example. Other people have never seen a gun in real life, and so the instructors get both of those people and everyone in between to the same level of
competency.
Yeah, and so it's about learning, the logistics, the legal and logistical side of things, the physical and fun things, and everything in between. You've got to learn even the basic stuff. You've got to learn how to march. You've got to learn how to salute. You've got to learn how to deal with being tired. It's very early starts. You've got PT, in the morning before your day even starts. Yeah, so it's a big commitment, but like ambulance policing is not for everyone. But I felt that I brought a whole bunch of transferable skills over to the new role, and I haven't really looked back. College was good. It was good.
I also guess with police you'd be doing a lot in terms of learning how to communicate, like de-escalation techniques, things like that.
Yeah.
As well, you'd see that stuff quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's again. So I think I was pretty lucky. I've been in scenes where people were angry and worked up and upset, and believe it or not, paramedics get abused a lot. They get threatened a lot. So I've been in those high emotion environments before, and understanding scene safety, similar thing, where to park the car in an ambulance. You want to be able to drive straight to hospital. You don't want to have to worry about doing a 3-point turn and all that sort of stuff with a patient in the back. Yeah. So, I was able to pick up some speed in my learning in college in some areas, and then apply that to other things like, learning the legislation correctly, and so invest more time in what I felt was the harder thing or more sort of complex thing to learn for me. But then there's other people who are the polar opposite, who are great with rote learning and can recite things after reading it once, who may have a harder time in working out a set of handcuffs, how to use those safely, and for the person you're putting them on, and for the police officer using them.
And you guys train a lot with that sort of stuff as well.
Sure, yeah. You've got 6 months of college, and then you're still probationary for your probation period's 2 years. So you've
quite
got
a long probation period, yeah.
And so you've got supervision for that, or more. I would say you've got supervision forever. Even
you always partnered up someone.
To the commissioner. You know what I mean? Everyone answers to someone, so you've always got supervision. But in that aspect, you've got more available to you more often.
Yeah. Do you find, I know I found it in comms, people will come in with a kind of perspective of what they think the role was going to be, and then they come in and actually do the role and realise that it's not for them. Do you see any kind of that sort of stuff with policing?
Yeah. I don't think it's a large, subjectively from what I've seen, I don't think it's a large number of people. People who want to be in emergency services, same as ambulance, same in ambulance comms, same with the police. The stuff that I've seen, people who want to do it have a general idea of what they're getting into, and it's not what you see in the movies. It's often, for policing especially, there's long times where you're standing on the side of a road for hours upon hours, just manning a part of the road to make sure that someone doesn't drive through it, or standing at a crime scene to make sure that no one's interfering with it, that people going in are accounted for, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then you've got those high stress, high adrenaline jobs that you're responding to, be it a car accident, being something involving the use of firearms, or anything with even something like a missing kid. You're investing yourself in that. You've got to get a good outcome for all people involved, and maintain safety for yourself, for your colleagues. There's a lot to it, so I'm not surprised that not everyone makes it through. But I feel generally that most people kind of have an understanding of what they're getting into.
Yeah, they'll do their research before coming into a role like that. It is a big commitment, big learning commitment, like I said, probationary commitment, and a lot of the mental health aspect that comes in with the job, the things that you see and you do. You really got to be prepared for what the career you're starting in.
The other thing that I think is handy to know is it's not cookie cutter. Like every cop's not the same, and if it was, you wouldn't be able to run a police force. You need people of different backgrounds. You need the book smart people, you need the athletic people, you need the leadership people. Not one type of person fits the mold. So it is a job that could technically be open to anyone. You've just got to have the mindset that you want to help the community and you want to do your best to keep people safe.
Yeah, I think that goes for kind of all emergency services. Like, we're all normal people. We come into these jobs because, we like what we do. We like helping people. We like assisting the community, and, we're all just regular people coming in and doing our best.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And then you get to do things in both jobs. You get to do things that no one else will ever experience. And it's a pretty cool thing to be a part of.
It's really good being able to assist people in their time of need, no matter if it's a fiery role, if it's a nurse, a doctor, a police officer, a paramedic, something like that. It is all very rewarding.
And you're working with like-minded individuals. So we may not all be the same, but we've all got the same goal. That goal varies depending on the job that you're responding to. But if you may not be best friends with someone at work, but when you're both responding to that job, you both know, all right, what's our end goal? How are we going to achieve it? How are we going to do it together? How are we going to do it safely? And who's going to do the paperwork?
Mission first mentality.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And so we in Tennant Creek, it's a relatively small town, but we got a decent amount of staff that work there. I remember being recalled to duty on a day off for some escapees from the local prison and seeing how many people came in on their day off to help out. I was out on a motorbike one stage. We had people driving around in cars. We had people on foot, all working together for that shared goal of returning those people to the prison. And it took a few days in the end. Like, we're all working really long hours, but we ended up getting all of them. And we couldn't have done that if we weren't a team.
Yep, very important, that team aspect and not the me. It's kind of the us mentality and the mission first and working together.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not sure. I've not worked for another police force, so I'm not sure. And my sister's in the job, her husband, as I said, a whole bunch of other people, but I haven't really drilled them down on how ours varies to theirs. But again, I think that we're unique in as far as the distance that we're dealing with, the resourcing that you're dealing with. So we've, out of Tennant Creek, for example, we get sent out to Ali Karung to go help them, or up to Elliot if they needed, extra staff for an operation or some sort of response that occurred. So you've got to be flexible if you want to be in the job. You've got to be, willing to travel, willing to help out at short notice. As part of COVID, for example, I was part of the rapid access team. So I got sent out to Large Mo with, I can't remember, maybe a day's notice. Went out there to help out in that community during their COVID breakout, which was not just police, it was Department of Health and Education had to get in there because, kids can't go to school and
yep.
those sorts of things. And for a smaller community and a smaller police force, the help is obviously very welcome in that moment. And I got a lot out of doing those sorts of things as well.
Very cool. So what's the plans for the future? Where can you see yourself in a few years? Have you got any plans for the police force or?
Nothing sort of logged in. So at the moment I'm working traffic operations. Now the main sort of driving factor for that, I think that is one of those sorts of jobs that I can mitigate the risk of lifelong injury and or death to people using our roads. It's something that I saw working in an ambulance. I saw those negative outcomes as a result of motor vehicle accidents. And so even when I interviewed for the job with police, I said I want to get into traffic. I'm in traffic now, and you get the occasional comment, why aren't you out there catching real criminals and this and that? The job that I'm doing now is solely based on keeping Territorians safe and our visitors safe on our roads and mitigating those risks of lifelong injury and or death. So I'm enjoying that aspect.
Yeah, because like you said, you've seen it firsthand what can happen.
Yeah, and a lot of people are not ignorant to the fact, but they just don't know because they haven't witnessed it.
They're not exposed to it. That's right.
It hasn't happened to their family or friends. And I know we've only got a few degrees of separation in the Territory, but there's still people who just haven't experienced that sort of emotional trauma associated with those sorts of things. So the other thing that you kind of may not think about is in policing there's a whole bunch of different careers. You all wear the same uniform, well, unless you're in plain clothes, but you all wear the same uniform, but you do different jobs. So if you've got an interest in general duties policing, which are your frontline coppers that most people would sort of recognise, then that may be your entire career, and that's fine. But you may have a passion for forensic science. There's a career path for you. But guess what? You may get in there and go, no, I want to be in the dog unit, or I want to be in crime, or
Or TRG or something like that. Yeah, there's lots of avenues.
Be, one of the elite, or I want to work in comms, or I want to do this or that. I want to work in traffic, because I'm an ex-ambo and I want to see the volume of injuries and deaths decrease. And I'm contributing to that. So at the moment, I don't know what's next. I'd love to. I think the best job in the police would have to be working with the dogs. So I think that'd always be a dream, but it's highly sort of contested, those positions. I think give some random stuff a go, maybe work in the media unit or who knows?
The marine unit with policing would be great.
Target season.
Working on boats.
That's the one thing I wouldn't do. But yeah, I've done a bit of the school-based stuff, GDs, traffic. I've worked with some other sections to help out with crime, with warrants or the drug unit or whatever the case may be. At the moment, I don't have a real answer for you, mate. I'm just playing it.
I think either way, you've got a lot of options with general policing. Like you said, there's a lot of different avenues you can go. I mean, this is a role that you can come into with a little bit of life experience and move around, throughout your whole career. It can be a lifelong career.
Yeah, and and if it's not, some people use the skills that we get and apply them to a different thing. There's a lot open to people who work in emergency services. So if anyone's thinking about it, I'd say give it a go. But it's a big commitment. You got to do your research first.
Yeah, and they've got open recruitment, I believe, at the moment, so you can kind of submit your application.
Is this a recruitment? Yeah.
I guess it's turning into one.
Yeah. NT Police are always looking for people. I think they're doing a pretty good package now. So, yeah, but, if you're Territorian or you want to live in the Territory, then, police, fire, ambulance, NTES, give it a go. And if you're not sure, start as a volunteer. You can do volunteer firefighting.
Yep, volunteer St. John.
Volunteer St. John. You can't do volunteer policing, but you can kind of get an understanding of what police do.
But if we've got any young kids that are listening, through school they have the cadet program as well, which you can experience all three of the branches.
Yeah, they get business certificates and stuff at the end of their training as well, so that it's not just about seeing the thing, it's about applying knowledge and learning skills and actually getting a qualification at the end. So I think that's a pretty good thing. I wish I had that growing up.
Yep.
But life turned out all right for me, so I won't complain.
All right, finally, I want to touch a little bit on resilience, having spent so long in the ambulance service and the police force. What's some of the things you do to stay resilient?
You've got to learn how to separate the time on from time off. I'm not always good at that. I don't think anyone's a pro, but you've just got to work on making sure that you disconnect from the workplace. You've other activities that don't involve work, so invest time in your family, in your friends, and do other things to keep your mind occupied. I've been pretty lucky thus far. I do, as I said earlier, I do like to, be in the moment, but also kind of understand that's not my emergency, and disconnect from it and move on to the next job. That's the other thing. You may have a paramedic or a police officer or a firefighter attending a job for you who's been to something far more serious or far less serious before it, but you should still see a consistent approach every time from those people doing it. So your ability to disconnect from each individual thing kind of helps. Some people meditate, some people like to read, some people exercise. For me, I'm a bit nerdy. I like movies and TV shows and spending time with the family.
Sweet. Well, Rob, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story. You've given some really good insight into your various roles in the emergency services, and I think it's going to be really great for people to have a listen to and, get a little bit insight on the job and see if the career's for them, or just have a listen to see what us as first responders go through.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate.